we're so glad that you're here, and I'm going to be answering questions and guiding things through classroom and behavior management in a digital setting. So what I typically do is I'm waving hello to my students. I'm saying, hey, can you hear me? Can you see me? And then I turn off my video, because turning off that video helps with the bandwidth issues. And I'll say goodbye to them at the end. Okay. So I wanted to transition over into screen sharing again. I want to start with that PowerPoint to get started on our discussion. And I'm going to make sure I have that map up now. Okay, so keep checking in with me. If you need me to re-say something or we're having internet issues, absolutely continue to type in the chat. Now, just because when we have behavior, we have room chat open, this is for you. Typically in class, when my students come in, we do not have that in place. Students do not need to be on video. They can, with the large amount of students, when you have larger amounts of students, when you have parents, when you have all these other pieces, we don't. For you guys, typically you would. Okay, here we go. So, classroom behavior management. My name is Anna Cordero. I've taught in the classroom in public school. I've also taught for 6 years in a virtual setting. I was the teacher in the room. So when you asked, if you came into my classroom and we were describing what was happening in my strategies, I was the teacher in the room. I was the teacher who's taught at the back of the room and watched all the students as I was presenting on the board, right? So I would have that piece. When kids would be off task, when they needed to be redirected, when there was issues with chatting or being disruptive, I was the teacher who stood next to them, who had them come in at lunch to make up that time, who kept them before I released them for recess, those kinds of things. So just know that when I transitioned to that virtual setting, I too was very apprehensive of how do I manage kids, because in a virtual setting, in these live streaming, it can feel like they get free reign, which is not necessarily the case. So I want to go through the steps and things that you need to anticipate, and you guys attack this from the perspective, you guys are educators. You have so many tools in your tool belt. You know this. It's just translating it to what it looks like in the digital setting. You can't see me. I turn off my video. Yep. Okay, because I want you to just see what's on my screen. Can you guys double check that you can see this? Oh yeah, I sure can. There we go. Okay, so there's 2 ways of showing it. You can show it like this here, or you can be in sharing your stage. So let's start. How I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can answer questions in the chat. So setting the stage. You are front loading this material just like in the beginning of your classroom expectations or your transitions to a new unit. You set the stage. You need to lay groundwork out, and you need to be very explicit. And some of these things that I'm telling you might not translate to your first grade classroom, but the reason why you're saying it is now that they're in their home environment, it's not just about how your student would behave, it's also about how the background noise is, what they're controlling. So that's where you need to be considerate of fate in these situations. So we lay down the ground rules. What your expectations for a student or all of your students to do should be set up in a way that they can understand. Profanity is a big issue, and inappropriate content. I've had students who are reading out loud in a language arts class who we couldn't use the recording because dad got on the phone on the other end and used choice words. The third thing is no sharing personal information. We are so accustomed to saying first and last names in the classroom that can't happen in a digital platform. It's for security, safety, especially with the variety that we have of students using and teachers using technology. We want to be really mindful of that. Yes. I give you 4 of them. Okay, dokie. I would typically have, it's more about what, so I'm going to lower this chat really quick. We're going to switch over to our next piece. So here's some examples. I give you one on some side. You have personalities, you have standards. I am sharing them on the screen. So if you look left-hand side, the next two these things, you do your other questions, use whiteboard tools, really. Or have fun, okay? Because we're talking today, I taught elementary school, these are the expectations: following directions, use kind words, ask questions, be considerate friends. In a platform, just like in your typical classroom, they often forget what the rules are, and those reminders are really helpful because it creates normalcy, bringing with it. So we're going to keep transitioning because this happens. Let me make sure everyone can hear me.
I think I can hear you better now.
Perfect. It likes to reset like this. The beauty of doing this in real time helps you because this happens all the time in classes. Don't feel alarmed. Don't get stressed. That's normal. And if you remain calm and just go, oh, internet went down, check in, can everyone hear me? And go back to what you're doing, kids will fall in line. Just like you can't predict when your phone rings in the classroom, just like you can't predict when someone knocks on your door and gives you a note or what have you. Let me switch to the second set of classroom expectations. So what I did is I pulled from when I taught in elementary school classroom, I pulled one of my posters that I used to carry. So this would be somewhere for, because you can do this kinder first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, just like you would at circle time, at their independent work time, whatever that first activity is for the day. I cannot stress this to you enough. This is why we're spending so much time on it, is utilizing the tools and the structures you already have. So if you know what language you used all year, you're just applying it digitally. You can make slides. You can make these in Google Slides. I use PowerPoint just because I needed to send them out different places. The idea is that you are controlling what students see, just like I'm controlling what you see. If you guys are at full screen, that's better. If you're on a phone, that's difficult. These are things that will come up. The routine of all these things, right? Here's some other tips and tricks that I do with communication. So I send an email session time prior to us starting live sessions. It's going to be the same thing all year. I typically do that in my welcome letter with my families. I do that in those contact calls that you guys have been doing. The first thing before I welcome, just like I did, was we're setting the stage. This is the expectation. It's my thing mute. Why can't I chat my friends? Keeping those things private are super beneficial because you're not having those side conversations, right? That you then have to monitor when you're doing whole class instruction. Some of the other things that you need to front load in keeping in mind of what you're doing is being sure students have the following, whatever that is. So what you want them to do for that 20 minutes, that hour and a half, depending on grade level or how much work time you're doing in class. Because perhaps you're a kindergarten teacher, you have Google Slides, you're having them use that drawing tool to work on their letter recognition, where you're giving them work time. You might be in there for an hour, but your instructor might be 10 minutes. You want to make pencil, their headphones, their textbook, their crayons, their whiteboard, whatever it is, their packet, whatever it is that they need, that you've offered. Remember, I'm not telling you what your students need. Based on the lessons, students need to have their passwords and digital documents. Oftentimes, especially with Google Classroom, especially with Hangout, and especially with Meet, students like to save their password. So if you have Chromebooks that your district has submitted out, they have their private at-home iPad that they have out. As you're transitioning, or if there's a glitch, that's a problem. One of the things that I love using with digital documents is that if you know the assignment that you want them to do and you have a third grade classroom, making a PDF of the worksheet you would have had them do this week, making it and translating into a Google Doc, then making copies for each one of your students. They can have that pulled up, ready to be worked on while your instruction, just like you would have that passed out and ready to go. By being able to transition from, by having these tools. Yes, that is still working. I apologize for that. My internet is being silly. I'm going to go back to what I was saying. I apologize. Once again, this is where students they oftentimes tend to act up if these things happen by me defaulting and having you guys not be right. If you were my students, not having those chats open, not having those things in place, that's a piece that we're dealing with. Does that make sense to everyone? Some of this will happen. Remember that we went from not most brick and mortar all being in-house pen to paper. Now that we're having bandwidth issues, those things occur all the time, and being flexible with that occurs. So, okay, I'm going to go back to what I was doing and looking at these expectations. So I'm going to start back over from the beginning of materials. You all have materials that you need in place. You have them. You know what you want your students to have. You know what that's going to look like. And allowing that is really beneficial, whether those are pencil, paper, headphones, textbook, packets, those kinds of things. Passwords, and we'll have passwords in their digital documents that will also be really important. Students have a tendency to not write those down. Giving a minute is making sure that they're in a quiet place, so they're not in the middle of siblings. Having passwords in their digital documents ready to go is super important. Students have a tendency to not know those things. This is going to happen. You're going to have connectivity issues with having so many students online during the day. It's going to be a problem you're dealing with. This exact situation, although not ideal, is something that we virtual teachers deal with all the time. And this is where behaviors come out, right? Oh, the teacher's busy doing this. Having settings set the way that they should, where they're set to private, they don't have the mic, will, when you return back in, and you can see how quickly I can return back in to make sure that you can get them back on track. I haven't reshared my PowerPoint yet. I just wanted to note that this can happen multiple times in a session. Do you notice how I come back in? Okay, you guys can hear me. I'm checking for understanding. We're going to now refresh. Here's where I'm going to start back. I'm going to answer questions at the end. We are on this piece. Here we go. So we're talking about front-loading expectations. Knowing the tools your students need each day will manage their behaviors. It will help them understand what they need to do, and will drive down the anxiety, because we know when kids are acting out is because there's something up, right? Because they didn't hear the instructions, because they're worried about what you're asking them to do, because they're feeling frustrated about attending to a task. All of those pieces, we know they're trying to tell us something. And by minimizing this and minimizing those controls, you're going to be really clear to give them those instructions. And then those video links, those recordings, are going to be the reinforcement for them, because they're going to be able to hear that again and again. Okay. And so we have tools like pencil, paper, headphones, right? They're physical things. Most of my students, because they do this on a regular basis, have virtual mouses, right? They have the wireless mouses. Have students know their passwords. I cannot stress this to you enough. 90% of what students often ask me again and again, what's my password? What's my password? They need to have that written down. I give them a physical document. It's really easy to make, right? User password. You need to craft that to go with these expectations, so that way they know where to write it down, because otherwise you're going to be doing that over and over again. Students need to be in a quiet place away from siblings, guardians, and distractions. So I was in one room that I taught my classes in all day. I walked on the other side of the house to my garage where I am currently, to make sure that you can't hear all the distractions that are occurring at home. Third thing is students need to be dressed appropriately when using the camera. It's really important that you say that because your kid might be dressed, but that they're at home, they're in their own home. You need to be aware of that, and they need to be aware of that. Utilizing your tools in the platform, right? Closing chat, this is what you're using. This is the parameters for the whatever platform you're using, whether that's Google Meet, Hangout, Blackboard, Adobe Connect, WebEx, Zoom here. You need to have those chat privileges closed so they can't talk to one another. You need to make sure that they come in with mics muted. Everyone has different setup, right? I have headphones in and I have a microphone on my headphones. You can't hear a lot of the outside noise of my 3 children in the other room because that's how I have it set up. Different kids might be using their computer mic, which doesn't always work. Not allowing kids to just join before you get into the room. That's really important. We had that set up, so I wasn't able to become a panelist till Karen brought me in and gave me that. No file sharing, no screen sharing available to your students at this beginning point because you are setting the tone. And then one of the things I really like to use is when you're pushing out work, using Safe Tube Converter for links. If you don't learn anything else from this that you're taking away that's new, please use Safe Tube Converter. It takes your YouTube, all these amazing resources we have on YouTube, and it converts it to a link that just shows your video. There is no outside content they cannot get on YouTube. You don't have any of those concerns. And all you have to do is put into Google Safe Tube Converter. And a lot of you guys might be utilizing that already in class. Any questions on, I'm now staring, I have it covered a little bit, on tools and examples of expectations. I'm going to keep going. I can answer some of those off-topic questions at the end. Remember, we want to make sure we stay on topic. So let's talk about when something happens. Because stuff happens, just like I lost connectivity. Kid's going to say something they shouldn't. The background noise might have things come up. Here's the deal. Whenever there's an issue, whether it's the internet connectivity having a problem, whether it's a situation with something that occurs in class, whether it's a student behavior or just, their environment, you need to stop and assess. And you take the next action. So like I did, I came back and stated that previous part of my presentation, checking for understanding, checking that information. Second thing, if it's bad, you stop the recording. If a student uses a profane word, if they share their personal information like first, last name, phone number, email address, you have to stop it. Does that make sense? I can show that at the end. If it's a kid, right? If it's an oopsie, you pull the kid aside you can regroup, get them back on task, finish out that lesson. You can always do a mini lesson of those expectations to send out as a recording since those examples are now no longer able to use. Make sure you pull the kid aside and address the issue because if it's something out of their control, they're going to feel really stressed. Oh my goodness, they were so loud. My mom, I tried, Miss Cordero, I did not mean. You pull them aside you pull them into a breakout room. Every single platform you guys have told me has breakout room capabilities. You make a new room, you can move your student into there, and you can talk to them one-on-one. You want to bring down that anxiety for a student, especially, your kids, your students. By this time of year, you know exactly what students are. If Susie was here and brother is yelling and they didn't mean to when they were reading out loud because you let them read out loud, you want to ease those tensions. On the same address, you want to pull them aside one-on-one while the kids are working, maybe after they release. Perhaps you're making that phone call home because you needed to release and that student left, to make sure you're following up with the behavior, just like you would if you were in the classroom. It just looks differently here. So you can, if it's an oopsie and Susie typed in, oh my goodness, Miss Cordero, I'm so sorry, you could do that in typing. You could pull them into a breakout room and have a one-on-one discussion, because you can allow for mic privileges. You can allow for typing privileges. I know your students aren't always, right, type savvy, so those are options. If that student was acting up and you didn't get to touch base, make sure you call them after it's over, because you want to follow up and you want to show that consistency there, and you need to document the issue. So that might mean, right, Johnny wrote not nice words on our shared Google Doc. I'm going to take a screenshot of it, right? And you guys should have those on your laptop. If you don't have that ability, all you got to do is type it in to Google, and there's lots of snippet apps that you can download for free. Document it, save it, delete it so that the other kids who are seeing your PowerPoint don't see that portion, and follow up. Keep a record just like you would in the classroom. You guys take notes on your kids. You know who's had a couple minutes of recess taken away. You know that procedure, and that way you can follow up in place, because if you're seeing it over time, especially because remember, we're in crisis right now, right? Our students are in crisis. Those behaviors might come up just because they're really struggling to communicate what's going on, and being able to have that example to follow up with your students can really bring down that stress, anxiety, uncertainty that our students are going to see, right? Because those apprehensions are there a lot because of the fact that they are uncertain of what's happening. They're uncertain because this is a new platform of learning. They're uncertain because they're not permitted to leave their home. They're uncertain because their schedule and their lives have changed. There's a lot of things happening. And by doing twofold of setting expectations, making a routine, and things like that really helps, right? Furthermore, if this is persistent behavior and you've documented the event or events, you need to let administration know. You need to make sure that they're made aware of what's going on. You need to talk with parents and guardians. I always start out with the check-in, right? This isn't oh my goodness, Johnny's, Susie's in so much trouble. I kind of just get a narrative of what's happening in their home, what's going on. And you need to know the disciplinary steps with your district. They might not have explicit steps, that your principal and you might need to work on something just for Johnny. Yeah, I can at the end. Absolutely. Yes, I can. Does this make sense? By you having it documented, you can see it's Johnny. You can see his name. You can do it, that he's done this 3 times. That's the evidence to back this claim. You're not going to have this, well, he said, she said kind of thing. And I can show you what that looks like. Give me 1 second, because I had to walk away from my computer. So I am going to stop sharing for just a second. I'm going to turn off my mic. I'm going to run across the room, and I will come right back. I will do 2 things, and you guys can ask a few questions and think about what you need to. Don't type it in the chat yet. Let's see if you can follow directions. I'm going to show you what Safe Tube looks like. I am going to show you what a snippet tools looks like. I'm also, when I make that snippet tool, I'm going to put it on a Word document so you can see how I'd write notes. There's something else that you need, I will happily answer that for you. So hold on for me just a moment. Excellent work, friends. You did an awesome job. Lots of times when you are doing this, you guys are teaching from home. Many of you also have children at home, your own children, or a spouse, or a roommate, or somebody else that is living life where you are. And so are they. But giving those explicit instructions helps students know what to do. If I gave you nothing for instructions, if I didn't front load what's happening next, I would have had a flood of questions in that webinar chat of all the possible questions that you can know. So let's start out with Safe Tube. So I'm going to put that in the chat so you guys have that. And I'm going to front load this. I'm going to share my screen really quick. We're going to start with that. Okay. So we have SafeTube here. Any YouTube link that you want to use, and I'm going to show you something that we have been using all the time. So this year I teach 7th grade. I use a lot of TED Ed videos. I often give a disclaimer on this particular site because it is a K through 12 site. We also don't want our younger kids looking at above age content, as you can see. And so let's look at this. So if you say, why do we have leap years? That's a elementary school thought process. We're in a leap year this year. When you give this TEDx, right, and I launch it, it launches into YouTube. Does that make sense? That can be problematic, right? You'll also see it by going to YouTube, like if I go to YouTube and I want to do Art Hub, we're giving some extension activities for items, right? So Art Hub's super fun right now. Lots of teachers are using this. So my students watch
our
this
friends
video.
Today were super
age appropriate, gives them step by step. The kids are super excited. Do not want them to then have all access to all of the internet. That is why we know that YouTube has lots of different content. All I do is copy. I paste the link in here. I put generate link. It's going to open up into a new screen. I'm going to press copy. I'm going to open up a new window, or I'm going to put it in my Google document for the week of assignments or in an email, and it's going to look like this.
Hey, our friends today were super excited.
And it is still the same video, but you notice they cannot go anywhere past the link of this video. We do not have issues with commercial. We do not have issues with a parent calling me saying, oh my goodness, you gave them a video on blank content, because YouTube puts commercials based on anything. And it could be from their home. It could be just because there's all these algorithms, and that can be very problematic. And so that is SafeTube. It is amazing. I, as a teacher, are incredibly conscientious of the materials that I give students. They act out because students act out because of the unknown, right? They're avoiding something, they're uncomfortable with something, they don't know how to do something, they're frustrated by something. And monitoring, just like I did, right? I'm monitoring the chat. I'm only giving them access to certain things, and I'm following up with their behaviors, right? By checking your Google Classroom, by checking what they're turning in, by checking in at home. It's going to really manage all those things. Yeah. I'm not showing you anything that isn't free, friends. I promise. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to make sure you guys have this, because I noticed that I did not send it where I should have, which happens. Can you see that link now? Now, here's something else. SafeTube's used by lots and lots of teachers. Sometimes it'll say, can't generate the link right now. Don't worry, it'll do it later. It just means, just like when I was having technical issues in my house, that it just isn't working right now because everybody's accessing it. Okay. One of the things you need to say, if you do not first succeed, try again. And one of the things that helps me build rapport with expectations, behavior issues, is modeling mistakes. Whether they are unintentional, like having technical issues, or they're intentional, like I asked my students this morning how their weekend was, but I wrote week, and you know, all 35 of them said, Miss Cordero, you meant weekend. Yes, I did. I did that on purpose. I want to check in. I want to make sure they know what's going on. I have buy-in that way to show how human I am. We are all in this learning curve together, and that's really important. Okay, so let me stop sharing. give you guys just a breath. We have lots of time. We have about 20 minutes, 19 minutes left. I'm really conscious of the time. I just want to turn off my mic for a second, have you process that. I'm going to prepare the next thing about documenting, and I'm going to give you a minute. Oh, you guys, can you hear me now? Yes. Okay. So I'm showing you this. I'm writing that on the board. Typically, when I write things on the board, I don't say anything because I'm not ready till it's ready. You guys are getting concerned, right? We want to make sure sometimes when we can show them something before we start instruction, right? Just like if you're passing out papers, we do not give them our instructions prior to that. You're causing confusion. You're going to get kids behaving badly and automatically off task if you do that. This is, you know, this is kindergarten, first, second grade, depending on the group that you're working with. Remember, this is a beautiful time for reteaching, reinforcing, and getting them into, I mastered that concept. So if we're doing this here and I'm saying 2 + 2 is what? And I'm having the students work, they could be typing into chat right now. What's the answer? 6, exactly. Your activity is going to be based on this. The other thing that you need to remember is that there is always a delay on many of your students of what I'm saying. That wait time feels like a long time, but it's because they aren't necessarily hearing it in real time. As quickly as I'm talking doesn't mean as quickly as you're hearing, and so that's why we're doing this. All of those things are set off. When you're talking, you shouldn't be having first, second, kinder, first, second, third independently in your live sessions. You shouldn't be going for long spans at a time. That's part of the front loading. So all I'm using, this is the whiteboard in Zoom. So when you're a host and you share your screen, this is the tool that you have in that. I like using it when I need to pull a kid in where we're doing responses. Does that make sense? Johnny's really struggling. He sits in my class, he tries really hard, he's not getting a task. I say, Johnny, you stay in by ourselves. And we model this. I make him a host with me, and he has whiteboard tools, and I give him that access. This is within Blackboard. And I'm going to do some snipping so you can see. If your student, and I'm going to close, I'm hiding that chat for the moment, an inappropriate word. I'm going to show you what that looks like. So students have this access, you have this access, you're the one permitting those access. Wait time is so important. You have to remember when you're working with students, kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, that are in your self-contained classroom, that off-task behavior has to do with distraction. Typically in a digital platform, you want a parent, an older sibling, someone sitting there with them, because just navigating a computer is very difficult, right? Wait time is essential, not only because students need to be able to think, friends, be able to think, but they also need to know what's happening. So let's look at it. So I recently in my lesson in Zoom, one day, students started to draw a picture. It showed on my slide during the lesson. It never happened again, but I'm not sure what to do. That's just not allowing them to have open access. If you keep your parameters on this. Yeah. Those are easy. Okay. Let me share one more thing. Are you ready? I'm seeing lots of people type, so I just want to make sure you're ready to focus back on me. Okay, so let's reiterate before I talk about documentation. Students at home, when they're in Zoom, should have a supported partner, just like you would have them in like eyes on. Even kindergartners need wait time. Kindergarten, first, second, third is much more beneficial for them to have eyes on, meaning you have their video open, because you can tell if they're still paying attention, and you can prompt them. Saying their first name in a recording is not an issue. I say them all the time. Johnny, are you okay? Is everyone good? Thank you, Grace, for following up with your friends, that kind of thing. Eyes on me, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. You can have them do visuals. So things like putting, right? Like when I taught kindergarten, we always said, Ellie, right? Miss Cordero puts on her listening ears, and then all the Ellies follow, and then all my students put their hands on their ears. Those are ways to redirect, but you have to have that wait time, because it's both a digital transformation and also they need time to think and process. And that's why you don't do a lot in one session, right? And I teach 7th grade. So in math in 7th grade, I go through vocabulary words in 2 to 3 problems in a 45-minute period. That's it. Because they shouldn't be doing anything beyond that, because I'm doing instruction and checking for understanding. Okay, so pivoting. Here we go. When a student does something naughty, if they say something bad, you always have notes around you. Like, I'm the Post-it queen. I have them everywhere. I get my pad. I write down Johnny wrote something inappropriate or said inappropriate in class. Okay. Depending on, right? First thing is you can type to that person, hello, Johnny, come on. Do we talk like that? How are we using our words? The next thing is we can pull them into a breakout room and talk one-to-one. Johnny, what's going on? I can see you're using some language that's not appropriate in the classroom. And Johnny says, I am so stressed out, blah, blah, blah. And you deal with those things. No, I'm not on anything. I'm just talking to you. Third thing is that you can, if they wrote something down, you want to make sure you document after. I have a hot sheet on every single one of my students. That it's like my initial call sheet. It says their name, address, telephone number, who, my knowledge of who lives in the home, that kind of thing. And I write Post-its and document per date, time, what we're doing, and like that. Let me show you what that would look like. So let me share my screen. So I showed you a video. On this Word document, I'm doing a few things. I gave you on the top what it looks like when your students in Zoom, when you give them privileges on whiteboards, what it looks like. So you can see that. Most whiteboards have the save option. It'll actually download the screen. So you wouldn't have to worry about it. I used a snippet tool, as you can see, and Johnny wrote the word sucks. So I would say 3:30, 2020, 4 p.m. session. J. Flores used inappropriate language. Right? Left class before and then I'd put phone call needed, right? I can then now stop sharing. I'm done. That's all the documentation I need. My friends like you all who are here, who are still participating, behaving, yeah, we can do that. Go back to what my students are doing. I don't need to write that documentation down. I just need to capture what it looks like. Does that make sense? I don't need to write all the notes. We wouldn't do that in a classroom. If you're giving Johnny detention or a slip, you do it when it's convenient for you. We don't stop the whole class for those kinds of behaviors. You can follow up, you can go back at the end and do it. Whatever works well for you. I tend to take the screenshot, get it off the page, resume. Does this make sense to everybody? Questions on any of this kind of stuff? I'll look at our separate section as you guys are thinking. Snippet tools are tools that you can download. If you look online, if you put in Google, I need a snippet tool. That whiteboard is on Zoom. You could also use a blank Google Doc. It's your discretion of what you want students to do. I think a Google Doc's easier because they could share it all together. You could share it just for the class that day and they could do the work on the page. You could and have that running live with them. There's some other resources, any of those things. The snippet tool is super helpful because if you have digital resources, like you guys have your books and stuff, you have your worksheets, you have your wealth of material, you make those into PDFs, right? And I know you've seen it where notes, but Cam Scanner is really helpful. It's free. There's a premium. Oops, keep doing that. It's set to private. Hold on. Cam Scanner. Yes, thank you. Cam Scanner is an app. It's free. Your parents can use it. I like it better than using the notes feature because there's a free version and you can make you can make batches. I literally take my phone, take a screenshot of what I'm using. So a document, anything like that. And it literally is, you download it. It says single batch. Do you want to make it in, right? And then you adjust it. You press OK, just like it. There's not a way for me to do a demo on it, but it walks you through it. Cam Scanner is used for individuals who don't know technology at all. It was created for that purpose. It's free. You can attach and use your iPad as a whiteboard. You can use Zoom and then log in on your phone and use that as a whiteboard and do pen to paper. I used to do that. I do that a lot when I am reteaching, when I need to write out pieces. All you do is you log into Zoom, you stop screen sharing, you send yourself an attendee's link, just like you send for your students. You log in on your phone, you share your video. Your video happens to be your pitch. We got 4 minutes left, and so I want to recap, but I want to make sure everyone got answered their questions. So in a nutshell, behaviors have everything to do with you monitoring transitions and expectations and following through when behaviors happen, just like you did in the classroom. The documentation is holding the piece of work, right? The worksheet that they scribbled on, right? The shredding of a paper, whatever it is, we're doing that digitally. You're following up. You know exactly how to do that. Yeah, your iPad or your iPhone is another student. All of these tutorials that you're asking about, I promise they're all on YouTube right now. There's such a wealth. We've had such a fantastic time with this community, with people pulling things together. But I just want to reiterate with you, if I cannot stress this enough, you're giving them safe links. You're driving those expectations. Those expectations are consistent and congruent throughout every lesson. If you set this set of expectations, you're doing it every time you're going live. You're doing it every time you're in a video. No, it's an app.
And I think too, if I can say something, Anna, this is Karen Taylor from CTA. Your district should really be providing you with software, so it's not incumbent upon you to just have to find free versions. So if that means that you need the paid version of Zoom for better security or privacy, then your district should be paying for that. And your local association should be working those details out with your district.
Absolutely. Because all of this behavior piece that's in tangent with that needs to come from the district. What you're permitted to use, what you're not permitted to use, really needs to be driven by that. Because I can't tell you I can tell you what I'm doing, but that might not be what you're doing. And that's really paramount, that you want explicit instructions. Use those Q&A sheets, talk with your union leadership, your reps that would know that if you're not getting that consistency to follow up. I always do Q&A sheets, so I'll send my head of schools 5 questions. And what I think it is, I need clarification on these procedures. Those are really, really important. And being okay, and regardless of following every procedure, having everything set in place, just like when you're in the classroom, things are going to happen. You're not going to have, sometimes the power goes out, sometimes there's a fire alarm, sometimes your internet doesn't work, sometimes your mic doesn't work. And being calm and going, yep, that didn't work for that little bit of time. Let me show you how to bring it back in is going to calm your students, because they're going to be, remember, this is a brand new world. We do not have this new normal set in place yet. And our kids are really needing us being calm, cool, and collected. Going, it's okay to make mistakes. I'm modeling that too. It's okay to do it this way. Here's my expectations. Here's how we're going to work on it together. And then just following up with all those pieces. It's all supposed to be black. I'm just talking to you now. All right. Is there anything else I can answer before I let you all go? I really appreciate you taking the time to come out today. Continue getting as much education, working with your leadership, getting district support so you know exactly the tools you need to use. We appreciate the time. And you guys can do this. I promise.
Thank you, everybody.